So with that, for Tim to be here and give of himself and of his time and take us on a little tour of the art of Zion, please welcome Tim Sheie, please.
I don't have that eloquence. He should just keep talking. This is a unique opportunity, and I've kind of waited. As Pastor Mike and I started talking about this, there are many ideas floating through my head, and I just wanted to set this up. Here's kind of how we'll go through this, because it's a little awkward for all of us to get up with our coffee and rolls and walk around the building. It made more sense, obviously, to put it together as a slideshow and tell you where these things are and tell you a little bit about the backstory for some of them. For me, things began at St. Olaf, and two gentlemen in particular, Arnold Flatten was retiring at the end of my freshman year at St. Olaf, and I had a chance to sit in his studio one afternoon. He was a pastor. He had been trained in Paris in 1933. Very talented person, and there are Flatten carvings and stone cuttings all over the Midwest and Montana and Washington. Once you kind of pick up on his style, you'd recognize them anywhere. If you've seen the exterior of First Lutheran in Duluth, a huge stone wall facing the street with the Beatitudes carved in stone. It's really amazing stuff. Trying to think of the church in La Crosse too. Anyway, I started at St. Olaf. My senior project was a stone project. I was trying to carve a flame circling, kind of swirling in a piece of onyx that was about 18 inches high. I was going to put a base of kind of logs and kind of hollow, beautiful green stone with orange veins through it. And I had most of it done. The shape was all done, and I was getting down to the finer points of smoothing it out. And one night in the studio, I heard this interesting little click, and the piece fell in half. I thought maybe stone wasn't the medium that I would continue with. Wood is far more forgiving. So I've got, not only here at Zion, but I've had a number of other churches ask me to do pieces, and individuals as well. I have to give kudos to Barb Lowe, who remotely, we've been going back and forth. She's worked on we call it a brochure, but it's developed into a volume called Sacred Art at Zion. And a lot of the things that we'll talk about today, there's even more information in this. I think difficult to duplicate this in volume, so I think we'll have a checkout copy at the desk, and you can kind of go on a self-guided walking tour. Let's start out with the big one, what I affectionately call Prayer 9. And it's in our Lutheran Book of Worship. Is anybody, have you heard this anywhere before? Like today, maybe? When we were researching what to put on this huge 8 by 16 walnut panel, we had a little meeting at my house, and Zion pastors got together. There might have been wine involved. And Mans Teig, a retired professor from Luther Seminary, gave us a lot of back information on this particular prayer. And it's interesting because this is not your typical ancient prayer. You know, when you talk about out of exile and then into the future, the Israelites wandering in the wilderness, but then also looking for us in the future. And then within, up here, beneath the sea, within each cell. Obviously that's not an ancient text. Anyway, we stand by. Selected this text. It was an engineering nightmare, really, to get it up on the wall. We're good. I just stepped on it. So it's about 900 pounds of 2-inch thick walnut that is bolted to the wall back there. But one of the things that it's interesting to do is I have forced you to enter through these prayers every time you come into the building. Maybe that's a funny way to describe it, but I take the time to read these, at least one quatrain, one of the 4 verses, you know, when I come in and out and I think about it. And what I love is that up here we've got the sun, moon, stars of creation. We've got the bread of life hearkening to communion with each other. And then down here, the dancing children. And every once in a while, I'll catch kids as they leave the building coming and tracing and running their fingers over the little dancing child. And I love that. That's what it looks like in the back. John Kinghorn and I worked out this engineering to join all those panels together and then hoist it up with a hydraulic lift. This is kind of one of my focus pieces today, what we call the Romans triptych. A triptych is an ancient medium. You'll see them in altar pieces across Europe from the Renaissance, where there were 3, usually, you know, a Father, Son, Holy Spirit kind of image, and that's what this one is. But a triptych would be 3 paintings that are united in some common theme. This one, and again, what I force you to do is you're coming in around who can separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus, for I'm sure that neither life nor death, nor angels, principalities, it goes all the way around, and then I remember a dear soul who said, "Tim, that's upside down." I assured her that I knew it was. When you look at this, a number of Barb and I, we've got a diagram in the brochure that you can look at later with all the scripture texts cited that back up these images. But if you think of it as creator, let's see if I can do this again. This is God the Father, creator, Savior, and Spirit, the 3 panels. You're starting with the waters of baptism here in the font. Here's the bowl, and water's flowing across all 3 panels, tying them together. So you have water here. And then you've got my dad's favorite psalm was Psalm 8, and sun, moon, and stars of creation. What is man that thou dost care for him? So the stars of creation go on all 3. up here. Then you've got the other image down here, the rocks. And we're exhorted in the text to be built like living stones into a spiritual house. And those stones carry across all three. Then you pick up the fields, the plowed fields. Yeah, there we go. So with water and bread and fields and green and stone, there are a few. No, I'll tell you a secret, but you have to promise not to tell anybody. There are some hidden images in these carvings. There are a few individuals who know this already. But if you look in the middle panel here, all of those stones are not what they appear to be. For Peter Nicomo, there's an image of Wisconsin. And for me, there's a little New Hampshire. So the two stones are changed around, and but please don't tell anybody about those, or go look at them either. All right, moving. These are now up in the office. The Trinity panels were originally down in the downstairs columbarium, and when that was renovated and everything changed in the renewal project, these were moved and then finally put back up in the office. You've seen them. I think I want to claim that actually the first one and the third one are upside down, but don't tell anybody that either. Personally, this is my favorite piece, my kind of my go-to piece here at Zion. Done as a memorial to Mark Madsen after his untimely passing. This is a hymn text from a very talented pastor, hymn writer, Carl Daw. And Carl was at Valparaiso and a number of other places, and was chairman of a hymn consortium in the United States, writing hymns. This one is "As Newborn Stars Were Stirred to Song." It's one I hope we sing at some point. We couldn't squeeze it in today. But the power of this text, and this is what happens to me, is that some of these hymn texts or choral pieces, rattle around in my brain, and finally, they've got to be expressed somehow, and so often they'll make excellent carvings. I hate to say it's always lettering. It's not always lettering. The music note, I explained this to John and Carrie Lace the other day, this little trick where the note extends out beyond the boundaries of the box. It's called interchange. And you go from positive to, I don't want to get too close, so we go away. You go from positive to negative space, but your mind still sees the object the way it's supposed to be seen. If you want, you can duck into the choir room as you leave and see it in its real state. Here's an interesting backstory on these. These are up just outside the exit to the sanctuary up in the upper narthex. And it's a series of 4 based on Psalm 23. And this was commissioned by Advent Lutheran Church, our nearby neighbor. And when Advent finally began to dissolve, they were struggling with what to do with their resources. And I heard that this was going on, so I called. A friend of ours gave me a name of somebody who's still at Advent. So I called there, and the woman just gasped. She said, I said, "This is Tim Sheie, I'm from Zion, and I did those carvings that are up above your stairway. And she was like, "Oh, I don't believe it. This is a God thing." Because they were standing, she and her committee were responsible for deciding what to do with these objects and many of the sanctuary things. And she said, "We're standing here looking at it, trying to figure out what to do with it, and the phone rings, and it's you." Well, I said, "Yeah," I said, "that probably is a God thing." So there was a big, "Behold, I make all things new," big oak carving that went to Faith Lutheran in Coon Rapids, and then they donated these back to Zion. So they're in the upper commons. Kind of that's a older piece. This was about I want to say 85, 89. Yeah.
I notice on these that the font is a different font than what you and Dr. Flotten had chosen to do. Yours seems to be very similar to his in that cut. Was that just an artist's choice? Was there a reason? Was there some thinking behind that different font compared to what I, in my short time, have come to associate with you?
Right. Yeah, lettering styles, especially when you're carving in wood or stone, some of them lend themselves to cuts better than others. If you want to go out and go to Hobby Lobby and purchase a laser cut panel of some kind, you can do that, but that's more of a mechanical method of lettering. But some of these, and even this font, it's probably Times Roman. It takes a while to cut with a chisel just because it doesn't lend itself to nice lines. So. Some people don't even know this is there. This is up in the corner, back what's considered the global headquarters for ushers. And back in that corner was a memorial. Many of the notes of appreciation for the sanctuary renewal are on the panel to the left, the little brass plaques, and that's got the image of the acorn, growth and seed. And then the right-hand one, the story behind this, again, my perimeter text and upside down text, but this is 2 verses of "O Blessed Spring," again in our hymn book, but written by Susan Sherwin, who recently passed away. She has probably 8 or 10 hymns in our hymn book, and very, very wonderful text. So, but the tree of life and the seasons of life goes into that. Now, if you look, here's I don't know, I probably shouldn't do this. The tree here, here's the upper part of the tree, here's the trunk, here's the roots going down into the stone, into the earth. If you look at it and you stand just in the right spot, half of the tree is in the carving, and the other half of the tree is in the play area across the street. So if you stand there and you'll get the half in the carving and look out the window, and the other part of the tree is out there. Now, love to claim this one, but this is certainly not mine. This is an Ujamaa, and the ELCA team that my sister-in-law served on brought this back for us from Tanzania. And basically, this one is a small one, but it's a family. But the larger ones in Tanzania are, in fact, whole villages, multiple 20, 30, 40 human figures all intertwined and carved together. And then when you look at this, the artist left the snake, the serpent, as the representation of evil, that is outside the family unit, and the family stays together to resist evil. This is a piece of ebony which is now very, very difficult to acquire. I encourage you to shine it up, get your fingers in there and get the dust off and handle it. Don't be afraid of that one. We have a couple of Mac Gimsey pieces. These are smaller versions of large bronzes that Gimsey did for the Nobel Peace Forum as part of the Nobel Prize series. And this one is, as many Gimsey pieces are, this one is mobile. You can go up and you can rotate it around. You can turn it. The front side or back side is the image of the birth of the child and Mary holding up Jesus. The reverse side is Simeon, who finally has seen the Lord's salvation after waiting in the temple for so many years. So a very interesting twist of characters on that one. Christus Victor has Christ a little uncharacteristically in the Y-shaped crucifix rather than the traditional T cross. But it also has images of the crucifixion of Haman and Esther's involvement with saving the Israelites. Another Gimsey bronze right outside the sanctuary door, Roots and Wings. You don't see the bottom now because the bottom is bolted to the pedestal. But this is what it says. He did these in 2004 for the Nobel Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Forum. And this is really a complicated one. I'd encourage you, when you get a look at the brochure, we've got the explanation from Mac Gimsey on what all these symbols are, and they're all intertwined and connected and twisting around each other. I won't even attempt to explain it. But again, this one will turn around on its base so that you can look at it. Don't be afraid to touch it. Now, I'm flattered that you think of what some of this is as art, but many times it's craft. And I have to go back to my grandfather and the love of smelling hickory and ash drying in the shop, before he made skis and dog sleds and all kinds of things. But there's much craft that enhances the beauty of what we do here in worship. I don't know where the rosewood pectoral cross went. The walnut ones are up there. Need an investigation. More recently, the baptismal candle is up there. And around the bottom there, blessed be God, source of all life, word of salvation, spirit of mercy. For the Christ candle, the baptismal candle, for you Norwegian introverts, when you're up there looking at your shoes, I've given you something to read. Now a couple other places, you see where this base echoes the processional cross up behind the altar. Many of the bases for objects that we've got are taken from the pews that came out of the sanctuary from before the sanctuary renewal. So there's a treasure trove of oak that was ready to go. And this, up on the lectern, the base under this one is one of those pew bases. But again, here's the echoing of the cross, the brass cross for the processional cross, the baptismal candle, the Christ candle. This little story here, we don't use this necessarily as our response after the gospel reading, but Pastor Brent came and he said, Tim, the stand that you made for the readings and for preaching, I like it, it's great, but because of my bifocals, it's down too low. I can't quite see it. Can you do something to? So now we've got 1, 2 of these spacers that push the text up higher for the visually challenged. This was initially from the request for a respectful place to put urns after cremations. And when they're part of the service at the funeral, this was a resurrection and life table. We're also using it for communion, certainly appropriate. There's an identical twin to this in birch done for the chapel. Oh boy. Sorry. I'm going to have to skip this one. This is 96 feet of prayer taking you from the chapel all the way over to the sanctuary. Originally, it was over in the border around the ceiling of the old chapel, and it fit perfectly when the sanctuary renewal was done. So we moved it up, and it's a linear piece now rather than circular. The text was Michael Dennis Brown, pictured on the right. Stephen Paulus put it into choral form. A hugely popular and successful choral piece. And this was another version of it that I did. This one is not at Zion, but I'm just the background on Michael. Michael was English professor, poetry and creative writing at the University of Minnesota. And he, when I did this version of the Pilgrim's Hymn, I asked if I could meet with him, and I wanted to show it to him. We got down there, and in the back of my truck, I slid it out, and the two of us stood in the street in South Minneapolis crying. Stephen Paulus passed away very, very suddenly 8 or 9 years ago, but the piece lives on through much of his music. In the chapel, not only functional items, but what you'd call more artistic items. The two I really enjoy are the candle stands. The one on the left, on the west side of the chapel, is the Hebrews. Since we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, we cast off every hindrance and run the race set before us. It was certainly an appropriate text for the columbarium and the chapel itself. And then the more functional pieces, the lectern, just again, the chapel is more birch, and the other parts of the entry are more walnut. That's the chapel altar table that I said mirrored the other one that's in the sanctuary, the walnut one. And again, this one also has "I am the resurrection and the life" in the perimeter of the chapel, the surface. I suppose in the past, well, since we've renovated the upstairs chapel, I have probably 15 or 20 of these columbarium boxes that you will never see once the loved one has been interred. This particular one is my brother, and do you have any questions? Because if you don't, I'm going to start asking them. All right. All right, yeah.
Do we have an art committee?
Do you have an art committee? Not to my knowledge. Nothing formal. So which would be harder wood, birch or walnut? Wrong, birch. Yep, the walnut's pretty soft actually. If you have ideas or, let's see, there are always, I look around and there are always places, blank spaces that call out to be filled. If you have any ideas, boy, I'd always be willing to discuss them. But that's the quick tour. I've got two things up here if you'd like to look at them before you leave. One is the draft of the brochure. Another one is the full text of the Carl Daw hymn, the Like Newborn Stars. If you want to see the verses, the two verses that are before the choir carving. And then probably the most interesting thing, but it'll take you a little while to read it. I've got a note that I received from Stephen Paulus about the Pilgrim's Hymn, and also a separate note from Michael Dennis Brown on the Pilgrim's Hymn. So both of their reactions to how this piece came to be and what happened to it. Interesting that the Pilgrim's Hymn to date has sold more than 160,000 copies. But if you'd like to read that, that's up here on the table. And then my go-to book is the Arnold Flatten collection, published by St. Olaf. This is actually his work up to about 1970, 71. And then after that, he wasn't actively carving. So that's it. I'm good. Thank you.